Thank you for being here this morning. If you haven't met me, my name is Nico Montes. I'm your Boston Scientific Endourology rep, which is just a fancy word for anything related to stones. So I'm also your rep for the Moses laser, but also for the Trilogy machine that you guys use for PCNLs, baskets, wires, anything that's either capital equipment or disposable products that are used to treat, manage, and remove stones. So today we're going to be talking about the Trilogy machine, and I was asked to keep this under 10 minutes, so we'll try to make it quick. Very quick summary of like why the Trilogy machine is used. There's a lot of different types of management strategies for stones. If the stones are small enough, patients may be able to pass it on their own, or sometimes physicians give medications that can relax the ureters to be able to pass the stone on their own. If that doesn't work, then there's different stages and different types of treatments that you can do in order to treat and remove stones. Then there's also ureteroscopies, which are kind of like the gold standard for removing stones up to a certain size. Any stones that are usually over 2 centimeters in diameter are indicated for a PCNL or percutaneous nephrolithotomy, and that is the procedure that the Trilogy machine is primarily used for. So you guys have this, you have a Moses laser. The biggest difference is in the type of energy. The Moses laser has laser energy. This one has 2 types of energy. Ballistic energy, which is more of a jackhammer that's physically hitting the stone, and then ultrasonic energy, which is more of a sound wave type of energy that further dusts those fragments into smaller and smaller like particles. One of the main differences between this and the Moses laser is that this one also has built-in suction throughout the case. So this is basically the tool of choice for a PCNL or a stone that would be bigger in the kidney, but it can also be used in the bladder as well for bladder stones. So in terms of some of the practical things that you should have in the room, there would be this wrench right here and the handpiece. Both of them usually come in a cage like this. Some facilities like separate them out. We recommend keeping them together. It just makes it easier to know where everything is. This is actually going to come from SPD, so you should always call it in before, because sometimes it's not in the cart, sometimes it's not in the room when you get started. And we have the 2 disposable pieces. The probe, you guys only have one size, so you don't need to worry about like different ones. You just gotta find the spot for the Trilogy probe, which is usually in this room, but in the 2nd floor. I forget what you guys call this room.
We moved it, it's downstairs in SPD.
Now it's downstairs. So, and the other thing is the Trilogy like tubing as well. As I mentioned, this has built-in suction, and one of the good things about this is that it's got a mesh. So basically all your stone fragments and the blood and the urine and everything else goes through here directly into your Neptune, and then at the end of the case you'll have all your specimen down here for stones. You can drain out the liquid, and then you can switch it out to this yellow cap right here, label it, and ship it out to the lab for testing. So I'm not going to open these 2 because these are expensive, but I'll walk you through what to do. So once you have this, the handpiece, the first thing that you're going to grab is going to be this probe. You take it out of the packaging. Where you see the blue ring on it, you're going to thread that blue ring on top of this and hand tighten it until you can't go anymore. Once you can't go anymore with your fingers, you're going to thread this wrench all the way down and then twist it clockwise until you hear at least 2 clicks. You can go more than 2 clicks, it doesn't really matter. It's got a mechanism that you can't like over tighten it, but you want to hear at least 2 clicks that tells you that the probe is tight. And then once you're done with the probe, we're going to go to the suction tubing. You're going to see it's got 2 ends. One of them is going to have a red ring on it. It's a little tiny, but the red ring is going to thread directly into the back of the handpiece. You just hand tighten it until you can't go anymore. Then you put it down, and then then we're going to grab this cup. We're going to put it here on the cup holder, and then we're going to thread the other end, the more kind of like flexible part of this tubing, into this pump right here. This is what's basically what's going to regulate your suction throughout the case. And then the other end, we usually recommend you connect it to an extension tubing that goes directly into your Neptune. You can plug this in directly into the Neptune, but we don't recommend it because the end of this on the other side, it doesn't give you a great connection. So we always recommend you have like an extra suction tubing, because like they have kind of like better, what do you call it, like like kind of like nipples that like connect directly to your Neptune. So once you're done with that, you can go to the back of this and you should see the power button that's down here. You just got to turn it on, make sure it's connected to the wall. It just plugs into any 110 volt like outlet that you may have in the room. So you're going to see the Boston Scientific logo. And the good thing about this machine in general is that if there's anything wrong with it, it'll tell you like immediately. Right now, it's okay to have these two things that are like on the red, because we don't have the hand piece connected and we don't have the probe connected. So we're going to connect the hand piece. We're not going to do the probe because we would need to take it out of packaging. The number one call that I get for Trilogy is actually related to this. A lot of people they FaceTime me at like 6:30 in the morning, setting up the room. It's like, hey Nico, we can't get this to open. It literally will not open. This has a child's lock mechanism. If you try to pull it out just like this, it's not going to come out. You got to pull this sheath downwards and then up. So if you go like this, then it comes out. So a lot of people just try to force it out and it's not going to come out. You got to pull the sheath down and then up. Just watch out for your fingers. Some people get caught up in this, and we'll take care of this later too. And then yep. And once you're done with the case too, just make sure you put this back on, because you don't want to sterilize this with this open, because that kind of like exposes the electronics of the handpiece. But we're gonna plug this in so you guys can see at least some of the green arrows go on. So now we have the console that's on the green, the handpiece is on the green. The probe is not going to be on the green until it's completely like threaded in and tightened. And yeah, that's about it for kind of like the practical piece. Some of the other things that you should be on the lookout for in a case, usually, for example, Dr. McRae does the majority of these cases. He likes using the hard setting. It has some presets that are already built into there. So we have, as I mentioned, two types of energy. The ballistic, which is going to be this right side here. You have an impact amount, and then you have a frequency. So basically, how strong is a punch and how many punches per second are you getting? So in this case, it would be 100%, and you have frequency from 8 to 12. And you'll hear it too in the case. Like if he asks you to like increase the power, it's going to go from tick, 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 or sorry, the frequency to tick, 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 just like very, very fast. And then you have the ultrasound energy here. And sometimes, what I will say is that Trilogy, as opposed to laser, it's actually very difficult to damage tissue with Trilogy. It's very hard on stones, but very soft on tissue. So, but the one time that I do see like some damage every now and then is when people go too high with the suction. Because if you go too high with the suction, then the doctor gets too close to the kidney tissue, and then sometimes you can give the kidney a little bit of a hickey. So just keep an eye out for that. Dr. McRae is usually very conservative with the settings when it comes to the suction, so you shouldn't need to worry about that. But yeah, aside from that, there's this little bar right here. Throughout the case, this bar should always be on the green. If it's ever on the red, sometimes it's normal because you have to. That just means that the probe is being bent. Sometimes you're in a very difficult place in the kidney, so you kind of have to bend it a little bit. But if it stays on the red for too long, then you actually risk damaging the probe, and basically at some point the probe will stop working. So if you see it that's on the red for a while, just make a note to the doctor and just be like, hey, Dr. McRae, just so you know, you've been on the red for like a few minutes, you know. If it keeps going this way, we might have to get a new probe. Not the end of the world, you can get a new probe, but it's always a good call out, because like sometimes the doctors are not really looking at this machine, they're looking at the visual field and what's happening inside the kidney. So this is something good to keep an eye out for. Do you guys have any questions, anything that you've run into with these types of cases particularly, or?
Some troubleshooting when some stone breakage gets caught in the tube.
Yeah, that's good. So that's also a really common call that I usually get. So the tubing, there's a few different hotspots for like blockages. One of them would be kind of like at the back of the handpiece. Anything that's gonna have a bend at some point, like especially if you have a really like gummy stone, it can like accumulate in there, and then maybe you're looking at your suction tubing and nothing's flowing. So it's really important to always keep an eye out on your suction tubing as well, because the doctor's not gonna be looking at it. They're gonna be looking at their field. So if you see that there's no stones that are flowing through the tubing, or there's no liquid that's going through there, you probably have a blockage somewhere down the line. So what you can do is basically just follow the line itself, and at some point you're gonna see a clump of stone or something else that's basically blocking that. What you can do, you can grab a hemostat or even with your fingers and just try to break up that blockage. And if you can't break it up with your hands too, what you can do is that you can stop for a little bit, disconnect this, and you can thread either an Amplat super stiff wire or something else kind of through the tubing, so you can break up that blockage manually. This depends from case to case, because the majority of stones that we see are not super gummy, but every now and then you'll see stones that really kind of clump up, and they create a lot of blockages too. So the important thing is to keep this tubing as straight as you can with not too many loops and kinks. And if you do see that the liquid or the stones stop flowing, there's a blockage somewhere, you just need to go and find it. And aside from that, if you run into any other issues that you're not familiar with, Peter has my number too. You can reach out to Peter, say hey, we're running into this, can we FaceTime Nico? Even if I'm not available, I always try to be available if my schedule's open, but I have 40 hospitals in 3 states, so I can't really guarantee that I'm gonna be here for every single case. If I'm not, I'm usually available over the phone for FaceTime to kind of troubleshoot things. Do you have a question?
No.
Okay. And that's about it. That's the Trilogy machine.
Thanks, Nico.
Yep,
Appreciate
awesome.
you.